Hello and welcome to Sci-Fi Explored. Today we will be going over the entity in one of my favorite movies, Event Horizon. Time for a spoiler warning. Following that, this movie is rated R. Movie footage used in Sci-Fi Explored are owned entirely by the copyright holders. The Singularity makes no claim of ownership and simply uses the footage for purposes of education, commentary, and criticism under fair use. This movie is a fantastic sci-fi horror film that is basically a haunted house in space. The movie has some of the worst CGI I have ever seen, but given the hectic filming and editing process, it is understandable why it is so bad. Aside from that, the nutty one-liners and dark and suspenseful horror make this movie a cult classic.
You got a course plotted in?
Yes, sir.
Locked and cocked and ready to rock.
Mr. Justin?
Everything's green on my screen, Skipper.
Skipper!
Ion drive in 10 minutes.
Ooh, it's time to play Spam in the Can. How about you, Stark? Would you like something hot and black inside you? Ooh.
Diving into the plot, the Event Horizon was a top-secret government ship meant to expand the possibilities of space travel. The ship creates a black hole in which can bend the space-time fabric of the universe and allow the ship to pass between 2 points instantly. As a self-proclaimed black hole nut, this is actually pretty close to what I would guess faster than light travel to be. The black hole is stabilized by 3 rotating magnetic rings, in which when the rings align, the black hole is released and allows for faster than light travel. Please note that when the rings are aligned, it does not mean the ship is conducting faster than light travel at that very moment. This will be useful later. At this point, I would also like to go ahead and note that the gravity drive explanation by Dr. Weir is very similar to the explanation given by Romilly in Interstellar. I guess the pen through the paper explanation of the space-time fabric of the universe is just a good way of putting it in layman's terms.
And that's what the gateway does. It folds space so that point A and point B coexist in the same space and time. When the spacecraft passes through the gateway, space returns to normal. It's called a gravity drive.
How do you know all this?
I built it.
The Event Horizon went on its maiden voyage to Neptune to test the gravity drive. The ship disappeared, never to return until now. The ship mysteriously returned, and the rescue ship Lewis and Clark is sent to discover what happened to it. This would be a perfect time to introduce the crew. First, we have Captain Miller. He's a straight-to-the-point type of fella that keeps everything running seamlessly. He is supported by his executive officer, Lieutenant Stark, followed by medical technician Peters, Cooper as the rescue technician, Justin as the chief engineer, DJ as the doctor, and Smitty as the pilot. Finally, we have Dr. Weir, the man who designed the Event Horizon. The Lewis and Clark arrives in orbit around Neptune and boards the Event Horizon to take a look around. Immediately, Justin ventures to the back of the ship, where the gravity drive is located. The 3 magnetic rings align and the black hole is opened. He approaches it, mesmerized, and is sucked inside only to come out in a vegetative state.
Something's wrong, Stark. Pull him out. Pull him out.
This releases a sort of shock wave that leaves the Lewis and Clark damaged, forcing its crew onto the Event Horizon. Later, the crew begin to have odd experiences. Peter sees her son with maggot-filled lesions on his legs, and Miller sees a man he once left to die. At this point, the entity seems to have released itself onto the ship. It does not take a physical manifestation, but is instead a part of the ship. The entity seems to know each person's individual fears, as Miller never told anyone what he saw when he left his previous crewmate to die, and that is exactly what the ship showed him. Peters had mentioned nothing about her son in which she wasn't able to spend the holidays with due to the Event Horizon mission, and yet the ship knew. On another note, the ship had been influencing Dr. Weir since its arrival back to Neptune. In an earlier scene, we can see that Dr. Weir is having visions of his late wife who committed suicide while he was developing the event horizon. At this point, things are about to heat up. Justin snaps out of his catatonic state and heads to the airlock where he starts the opening process without a suit on. After initiating the process, he snaps out of his trance only to endure decompression. The entity most certainly had its grip on Justin since the gravity drive incident. The entity was influencing Justin's actions until after he had started to open the airlock door. This was obviously to throw the crew off even more as the door couldn't be overridden and Captain Miller was forced to step in and save Justin. This ultimately saved his life as he was put back into the stasis tank to await return home and didn't have to experience what the rest of the crew did. As I had mentioned earlier, for the whole duration of these events, Dr. Weir has been the most susceptible to the entity's grasp. He has had several visions of his wife and a growing urge to stay on the increasingly dangerous ship. Dr. Weir has done nothing but make up excuse after excuse to why people are experiencing these odd events. And while some of his excuses are plausible, others are a complete shot in the water. The entity will continue to use Dr. Weir as a vessel to trap the crew on the event horizon. As repairs are finishing up on the Lewis and Clark, the crew prepares to evacuate the event horizon. With the intensity of the entity ramping up and the crew's insight to what happened to the last crew, they are very eager to get off the ship. At this point, video footage of the previous crew was recovered that shows what happened to them post faster-than-light travel.
Miller?
The footage is known as the Blood Orgy. I won't be showing it here on YouTube, but I can assure you that I'd be getting my ass off that ship after seeing that too. At this point, Dr. Weir goes full rogue after Miller explains that he is going to blow the ship to smithereens with torpedoes as soon as they get to a safe distance. Peter sees more visions of her son, where she is lured into falling down a shaft, ultimately dying. Miller then warns DJ that Dr. Weir is a threat right as Dr. Weir appears behind him. DJ is left vivisected in the medical bay of the event horizon only to be found later by Captain Miller. Captain Miller then heads to the bridge as Smitty discovers a bomb on the Lewis and Clark planted by Dr. Weir to keep the crew on the event horizon. The bomb detonates, destroying the Lewis and Clark and killing Smitty. Miller then arrives on the bridge to find an unconscious Lieutenant Stark and an awaiting Dr. Weir. Dr. Weir must have gotten tired of seeing the visions of his wife as he has removed his eyeballs at this point in the film, followed by the best line of the movie.
Oh my God. What happened to your eyes?
Where we're going, we won't need eyes to see.
Cooper, being stranded on the wreckage of the Lewis and Clark, ejects himself off of the wreckage, arriving outside of the Event Horizon bridge. Dr. Weir is pissed at this point and gives zero shits as he tries to shoot Cooper, resulting in rapid decompression of the bridge. Dr. Weir is sucked out into space in another awesome shot. Whew, at least the crew gets a moment to breathe now that he's gone. Captain Miller decides to use the emergency procedure described earlier in the movie to blow the ship into two pieces, separating them from the demonic gravity drive. As he prepares the charges, he is confronted with the previous apparition, forcing him into the gravity drive bay. There, he sees that the apparition is actually Dr. Weir back on the ship. They duke it out for a while, and eventually, Captain Miller detonates the explosives, sealing his fate but also saving his crew.
I see.
The ship breaks apart as the gravity drive engages and sucks the rear of the ship back to hell in one of my favorite shots of this movie. The movie ends with the rescue team saving Justin, Cooper, and Lieutenant Stark. The bulkheads of the ship ominously close, signaling that this might just be another experience manufactured by the ship. Wow, what a plot. Now let's take a deeper look into the entity itself, now that we have went over the movie. As I mentioned previously, the entity seems to influence Dr. Weir from its arrival back at Neptune and will continue to influence him throughout the entire movie. The entity proceeds to scare the heebie-jeebies out of every crew member until some refuse to board the Event Horizon.
Coop, how long are you going to take? Because I've got to get the hell out of here.
Look, you can kiss my ass, Smith, because I'm done.
The entity seems to be able to read one's past and portray each crew member's worst nightmare. I've strayed away from using words like hallucination throughout the plot description, as I don't feel that the crew members are actually hallucinating. It can sure seem like it at times, but it's more like an experience that can harm each individual, demonstrated by Miller's fire experience. It also seems to target those with insecurities, like Captain Miller and Peters, for example. Justin's fault was his curiosity, while characters like Cooper, DJ, and Smitty seem to remain fairly untouched throughout the movie. In the end, the entity's drive can be fairly difficult to pinpoint. What is its main goal here? To scare the crew? To take the crew back to hell? I thought the latter for the longest time. However, if that was the case, I would argue that it could have activated the gravity drive and took the ship back to hell long before Dr. Weir initiated it towards the end of the film. My reason behind that is because the drive opened itself for Justin right after the crew first boarded the Event Horizon. Why couldn't it have just then activated the gravity drive and took the ship to hell right then? Another theory is that it could have already made the trip to hell and used its visual deception in order to have the crew think that they were still orbiting Neptune. There was a point towards the beginning of the movie where the gravity drive was active while everyone was on board the Event Horizon. This would have been a perfect time for the transition if there ever was one. Another piece of evidence that points towards the crew being stuck in hell is, of course, the bulkheads closing ominously in the final scene. However, I feel like the flaw to this theory is that the crew never mutilated each other like showed in the blood orgy footage of the first crew. Personally, I feel like that things happened as they seem. Cooper, Justin, and Lieutenant Stark survived the ordeal, while Captain Miller was subjected to the depths of hell. Hopefully the same fate doesn't await for the other dead crew members of the Lewis and Clark. I've seen Event Horizon at least a dozen times, and it keeps bringing me back faster than Dr. Weir. I would highly recommend watching it if you haven't seen the entirety of the movie. What do you guys think of the entity in Event Horizon? Do you believe the crew escaped the Event Horizon in the end? Let me know down in the comments section below. Subscribe for more and give the video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. It really helps me out a lot. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you next time.
Well, I can see why they sent you.